Bottoms up. We're gonna talk about. I really wanted to make a video about John Galt, the would-be hero of Ayn Rand's novel Atlas Shrugged, because I don't think that he is. I don't think he's a hero or a good protagonist, and I don't even believe that his ideology, his philosophy, or even his decisions are right or correct. Not in the least. And of course, his speech was, it was just too much, too much. It was tiring to read his constant repetitions about 2 plus 2 equals 4, and A is A, and all that. It's like, whatever. And I want to talk about John Galt's Flaw. Uh, Unfortunately, uh, Ayn Rand was too biased in favor of his geniuses in Atlas Shrugged to detect John Galt's, primarily John Galt's flaw, or his sin, or his crime, which is, of course, in a way, his hypocrisy, but most of all, his total lack of self awareness. He, John Galt, and all of his friends, Dagny and Hank Reardon, and all of those people, they have this tremendous flaw in them, but especially John Galt, which is a lack of self awareness. A lack of self awareness. And what do I mean by that? You see, John Galt and his friends, they're two, they have a one track mind. They are automatons, they are machines. They define their lives, their existence, by being overly productive, meaning that every single moment you are conscious or awake that you have to produce, you have to better yourself, you have to improve upon something, you have to polish your art or whatever, right? And as you read her novels, especially The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, her characters, her geniuses, they are not human beings. They have taken all the joy out of life, and the only, I don't know even if it is a joy, but the only joy they get is by being productive, by working, by whatever, right? They have no other joy. They do not live life. They cannot live life. They do not understand how to just enjoy themselves without working on something, without building something, without, you know, they do not know how to live life in simplicity, because in simplicity is where you will find happiness, right? So their whole existence is defined by their genius trait, which is, running a railroad, pouring metal, building a motor, or running a bank, or whatever. This is what defines them, right? Or being an oil magnate. This is what their entire existence is defined by. And as I said in my other videos, if they were stripped of this one and only characteristic, their one and only genius trait, which is running a railroad or building a motor or being good at music or whatever, they would be completely empty people. They would have nothing else to do, nothing else to show for it, right? It is the only thing that they do, so they latch onto it because it makes them superior to others, allegedly. Uh, But I stipulated that if, you know, their talent, imagine if they offered their talent to somebody, to the people, and the people did no longer need their talent, whatever their talent might be. So let's say that Dagny could build another bridge or whatever, or John Galt could build another factory, and let's just say that a people refused, right? If the people refuse their help, what would they do? What would they have left to do with themselves if their talent were rendered void and nil, right? They would be completely hollow people. They would not know what to do with themselves. And I call this, the hollow gift that is genius, right? Because you have, I mean, even I am guilty of this because, I thought I had a skill, a talent that nobody else around me, did. And, I thought that I was better than them, that I was superior, that I was a better human being. And of course, that isn't true. But I cured myself of that. And this is the hollow gift that is genius because you have something that defines you as better or superior to other people uh, in the long run. That is the only thing that you will have to cling to, right? Because otherwise, in these people's minds, without such a thing as their genius, they would be nothing, nothing. They would be just like everybody else, and they hate, being associated with the lower classes or the normal human, average human being, right? In essence, they take themselves too seriously. They imagine that if they, you know, uh, can pour metal, or if they run an oil rig, or if they, if they're a judge or a musician or a bank director or whatever, they imagine that somehow they are necessary to a civilized society, you know, and therein lies their great sin, their great flaw, their great crime. They're too self unaware. They are not aware of themselves. They're hypocritical and they take themselves too seriously, right? Because, listen, in the novel, all of these geniuses, with the help of John Galt, they skedaddle. They go to their Atlantis in the mountains, right? And the theory is that if the geniuses of society, the producers, industrialists, the geniuses, the artists, the engineers, the architects, if they fuck off, then the theory stipulates that society would just crumble to dust and there would be nothing but savagery and what have you, and plunder and crime, right? Which, of course, is nonsense. I don't agree with that at all. I think society would move on as if nothing had happened. Of course, that is reality. But we're talking about the book. So the geniuses fuck off with John Galt, and society just slowly implodes on itself. It collapses. And catastrophe is everywhere. And here is the problem: how self unaware they are. Because they imagine that if they come back, society would be civilized again, and things would move on accordingly. Which, of course, is yet it's nothing but nonsense yet again. Okay, in reality, that would not happen because, like I said, they have only one trait of genius. John Galt is an engineer, and I think he has a degree in philosophy, and he can build motors and what have you, right? But how is he gonna solve starvation? How is Dagny going to solve the economic problem? How is Hank Reardon going to solve, you know, civil unrest? How is Francisco da Cunha going to solve racism and all of these problems, right? Sure, they can solve transportation, they can offer copper, they can, offer metal to build cars and what have you, but I'm talking at the essence of things because, of course, they only have a handful of geniuses and not all of them, can solve all of these problems, right? And there aren't enough geniuses to tackle all of society's problems, right? It can be done, and in the city in New York and in the nation America, everything is reduced to rubble. So there are no more geniuses to be had. So there is no way that they can solve the problem and civilize the continent yet again. It is impossible. So that's what I mean by the total lack of self-awareness in these people. They're way too arrogant. They are too in love with themselves. They have too much respect for themselves to understand their limitations, even as geniuses. Because if you're a genius, you're a genius at one thing. And these people are geniuses at one thing only, right? Because by the end of the book, right, John Galt is captured, and the people in charge, they want to make John Galt their dictator, their leader, because they believe that he has ideas to solve, especially to solve the economic troubles of the nation. And of course, John Galt, even though he refuses to become the leader, he says yet again and again, he repeats that he has absolutely no idea how to solve the economic troubles of the nation, right? So by the end of the book, the geniuses come back, but they don't have, at least he doesn't have any idea how to save the nation, especially to save the economy. So what are we talking about here, right? At the end of the book, the geniuses come back, and it is hinted at that they're gonna save the day. But how? How are they gonna do that? Because as we know, John Galt has no idea how to save how to save the nation and how to improve the economy and the healthcare and what have you, right? And I want to talk about hypocrisy and the flaw that is the character flaw in John Galt. Because listen, this guy, he leaves, okay? It is his right to leave. He leaves and he takes all of the geniuses with him. And because of that, the nation falls into disaster. It's on the brink of destroying itself because of him and because of all the geniuses that left with him willingly. But here's the thing that he says, yes, I did this precisely because I knew that the nation would crumble to dust. You see. Which is, of course, nonsense. There is no way a country or a continent or even a city would crumble to dust if a few people of prowess would leave. That is absolutely nonsense. They do not keep the nation or a continent or even a city going, right? It is a fallacy. But let's move on. So he did this with premeditation because he knew that the city would crumble and the nation would fall to disorder. I think he even says it in his speech. Yeah, I did this, I left, and I took all the people that are of genius because you don't deserve them. And I knew that you would destroy yourselves, right? So he admitted this. Now, here's what I have a problem with. He did all of this knowingly, willingly, with premeditation because he knew the result. But at the end of the novel, he and the geniuses come back to allegedly save the nation and help the people and rebuild and reestablish civilization. And that is what I have a problem with, because he is completely unaware, completely hypocritical of the fact that he partly, in part, allowed this to happen, because he left and he took all the geniuses. And now he has the balls, the arrogance to come back and say, well, here I am, I'm the genius, I'm gonna save all of you dum-dums, you see. Like I said in my review, I would have written the end of this book in a different way. I would have written it as such. I would have said, when John Galt comes back, the people, dirty, savage as they are, wild, because of the collapse of the nation, because of the collapse of society and civilization, the people would have the self-respect to stand up to these clowns, John Galt, Dagny, Reardon, Francisco, Ragnar, all of these people. So the common folk, right, the common folk would have the self-respect to stand up to these clowns and say, listen, we don't need you because you are partly to blame for all of this, and now you have the balls to come back and state that you're going to save us. On behalf of all the people, all of you, John Galt, and all your pals, you are, from now on and forever, excommunicated. You are exiled from this nation. We do not need you. We do not need your talents. We do not need your skills. We do not need your prowess. We do not need you. You are unnecessary. You have nothing to offer to us. Right? And that would have been a tremendous twist at the end of this book, because, it just doesn't make sense to me. The hypocrisy that's going on here. The clown that is partly responsible for destroying the nation because he left and he took all the geniuses now has the balls to come back and state that he's gonna save the world with his genius pals. And the people, they just bow down, they kneel, they subjugate themselves like good little dogs, like the good half-wits they are, and they're gonna accept this. Because, he is Prometheus. He is the man of genius. He is the man of knowledge, of wisdom, and of action. And he's gonna do things. He's gonna make moves, right? It's just a criminal what's going on here. So that is the flaw of John Galt, because he imagines that, oh boy, he is just so smart and so capable that he can save an entire continent from a brutality and people just devolving to thieves and violence. It's never gonna happen. You see, it's never gonna happen. And of course, it's obvious to me, right? I don't. It's astonishing to me that he does not realize just how flawed his statements are, right? Total lack of self-awareness, because he is partly responsible for what has happened. He has done this with premeditation, and he has admitted and confessed all of this in his radio speech. And now he has the audacity to come back after who knows how many millions of people have died. The country is ravaged, right, on the brink of its downfall, and he just comes dancing back, and he's gonna solve things with his pals, right? It's just crazy. A total lack of awareness, right? The hypocrisy, right? He is a criminal, right? If it were me, I would have stood up and said, "Listen, John Galt, Johnny, my boy, fuck off. fuck off. We don't need you, my guy. We do not need you one way or the other. We'll manage. We can manage. We're not as dumb as you believe we are, right? But he cannot recognize this because he's so far up his own ass that he cannot smell his own farts, right? It's so astonishing that he believes that without him and his handful of buffoons that an entire continent would crumble to dust because hundreds of millions of people and the politicians and all the others, they can't manage, you see, because they're not men and women of ideas, you see. They don't have any convictions, any principles. But John and his pals, they do. They know how to handle shit, right? It's insane. It's insane, you know. This is the crux of what I'm trying to say, that just because you have convictions and principles and ideas and a philosophy, and even if you're good at something, even if you're talented or a genius and you have prowess at something, right, something that you can do better than anybody else, you know it from A to Z, that does not mean then you can solve all of these intricate, complex problems that plagues an entire nation or a continent as large as America, right? Because he believes that if he's so smart, so smarty smart, he's gonna whisk himself back and he's gonna establish order and civilization and prosperity, right? Prosperity. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because that is not realistic. Just because you are superior in your intellect and because you can do certain things, that does not mean that you can save a society from itself. Society will eat itself. It only needs a trigger, and no matter how much expertise you have, that's not gonna solve anything. You cannot solve anything. Not you and not your friends. But John Galt and his friends, they cannot understand this because they're people of convictions and they have principles and they have standards and they stand by what they say, as if that matters, right? As if that makes them better than anybody else. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, he is an idealist, right? That's what they all are, idealists. And you know, ideals, theories, they're wonderful. Philosophies, of course, they're wonderful, but ideas are paper thin. Are paper thin. When you practice them, the results usually uh, they usually lack. Okay, because a society is just too complex. There are way too many moving parts, way too many oppositions and contradictions. And just because you are so smart and so capable doesn't mean that you are, the savior. You know, that is his flaw. That is his flaw of character, the flaw in his philosophy, the flaw in his uh, entire being, that he is so confident in himself, in his abilities, that he cannot see anything past it. He cannot see the reality of things. And of course, he cannot see his own limitations. Even though he said that I don't have ideas, I don't know how to solve the economy, but they're going to come back and they're going to solve everything, apparently. Right? It's it, it's amazing to me. And I said in other videos, the problem with these people is that they do not know how to live life. They imagine that they gain some sort of superiority, some sort of recognition, acknowledgement. They get brownie points for being better at something than everybody else, and that makes them special. That makes them unique. That makes them worthy of being leaders or whatever. Which of course isn't true. Right? These people, they know one thing. They know uh, they know that they're good at something, whatever that might be, and because of that, that means to them, it defines them, as an expert. And that means that they can make decisions and make rules and, you know, somehow contain, the chaos, which, of course, it cannot be contained. You know, I don't know how they have this audacity to imagine that just because they are geniuses at what they do, that makes them worthy, that they deserve to be leaders at the end of the book and just come back and allegedly solve all of these problems, right? I don't know who it was. I mean, it was maybe Socrates or Plato who said, if you don't engage in politics, then your fate is to be ruled by your inferiors, right? But that doesn't mean that you will be better, or that you will know how to rule justly, and that doesn't mean that you will have the expertise to solve all of these problems, because as history proclaims so vividly, that nobody knows anything about anything and they cannot solve anything. Not people of conviction, not people with expertise. They cannot solve anything, especially the the problems of a society. They cannot handle all of that. It is impossible. No matter how great you are, you're gonna fail. You see. And the reason why they do not know this is because they haven't been really challenged, right? Because they stuck to their own little bubble, building trains and railroads and pouring metal and building bridges and composing music, and philosophizing and being an engineer, that they had no connection to the outside world, to the exterior of their own little bubbles, right? And at the end, John Galt is confronted with this. We want to make you a leader. We want you to come up with ideas and solutions to solve all of these economical problems. And he says clearly, I do not know what to do. You know, and the best that he can come up with is, you should uh, refute taxation, as if that's gonna solve something. It's not gonna solve anything because the country is in ruins. You know, and so his singular idea isn't gonna solve anything, right? Yet again, this audacity to claim that yes, I did this. I am partly responsible for doing all of this, for leaving and taking all of your geniuses. That is why your society has crumbled. And now I have decided that I am worthy enough to come back and save you little people. Right? Where does he get this audacity that he imagines that he deserves to be a leader, to solve and to rebuild? Who elected him as such just because he's a genius at engineering? He is partly responsible. That makes him a criminal, uh, whether he's gonna admit it or not. Right? He is not a hero. Right? And uh, he should not be a savior of anything, because he destroyed this country, and from what I gather, he doesn't give a fuck how many people have died and how many victims of violence there have been. He doesn't give a fuck about that because he's a man of principles. He has convictions, and he went his own way guided by his principles and his convictions, and a lot of people suffered and died because of his convictions, because of his decision to leave. And now he comes back willy-nilly, and oh boy, you little people, you're so useless without me. You can't do anything. I'm just gonna rescue you real quick because I'm John Galt. Who is John Galt? That is I. I am the man of genius. I mean, he should be imprisoned. I mean, of course, at the end of the book, he should be sent to jail by the people. Because he admitted that, yes, I am partly responsible and I don't give a fuck. Dab on these haters. Right? Where does he get this audacity to come back and just do what he wants? You see? But in the book, the normal, average, hoi polloi citizens, they're so brainless, so powerless, so inept at everything because they're gonna submit to him, right? And bow down and kneel over and bend over because John Galt and Dagny and all the rest are just so superior to everybody else, and that is a great hypocrisy, right? That is a flaw, a crime, a sin of the highest degree. To be so in love with yourself, to be so confident in your abilities that you are not aware of what you have truly done, and you continue to imagine yourself as this angel of rectitude and of justice, right? Of justice. He is a fair man. That's why he let all of those people die and what have you. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. You know, talking about this book and of John Galt and his very special people that are so special and capable, it's actually funner than actually reading the book because the book Atlas Shrugged, it's a bit of a drag, it's a hassle. But talking about his total lack, total complete lack of self-awareness is just it's a treat, right? Because I know that in fact there are people like this, and I have met them, and they cannot see any flaw in their character whatsoever. You know, because he doesn't respect that old saying which says that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, with principles, with convictions. Just because you imagine that your convictions and your principles are just so stern, they're just so infallible, because of your perception that is biased, doesn't mean that truthfully, in reality, that does not mean that they are correct. You see, theories and philosophies and convictions, they are wonderful. They are cute, but they are cute only on paper. When it comes to actually applying them, that is when they crumble. Because what you have to face is reality. A lot of people with their own needs, with their own contradictions, and convictions and philosophies and ideas and ideologies and ideals, they will not contribute to anything because they're only ideas and only you perceive them as being fair and just and correct and logical. You see, a society has nothing to do with logic. A society is a herd of people, right? And people will do what people do, regardless of what is right or wrong, good and evil, right? But he does not understand this because he thinks that he is the one, he is the chosen one, because he is the greatest example of what it means to be a man of standards and a man of scruples, right? Completely unaware. So far up his own ass that he cannot smell his farts. Uh, it's amazing. And like I said, you see, these people, in The Fountainhead and in Atlas Shrugged, these people of genius, they are hollow people because in order to justify their existence and justify their choices and decisions, they have to prove to themselves and to others that they are superior, that they are as people should be. And the only way that they can do this is by being completely, completely stuck in their own little bubbles, working at what they do best. They are all trapped in their own little bubble, in their own little movie, in their own little perception of things, and they cannot even begin uh, to 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 sense even the outer ring of their little world. They cannot see reality for what it is because they imagine that if they're good at something, all of a sudden nothing else matters. And there's nothing wrong with being selfish and going your own way and doing what you want to do to attain your happiness and to attain your goals, but there will be consequences, right? And these people, they do not pay for their actions. They have no repercussions to suffer, right? And they should suffer because of their insipid, insipid hubris to imagine that there are like Prometheus who stole, the fire of knowledge and they brought it to man, just like Prometheus, and the people are just vultures and they are not grateful and they're just parasites and they mooch off of their genius, right? And if you don't like that, that is the reality of things. You see, that is how reality operates. If they didn't like it, they should have fucked off from the beginning. You see, because, right, let's say you provide a service, goods, whatever, to the people, whatever they may be, and these people pay for your services, for your goods. You see, that is the end of your connection, of your relationship, right? They do not have to be grateful. They paid you money for what you offer. That is a fair transaction. Stop being a baby. Stop crying about it. But these people, these geniuses, John Galt and the rest, they keep on crying about, oh boy, treat me special because I am a genius and you're all mooching off of me. Right? I mean, they paid for your service, for what you provide and for what you produce. Am I not understanding something? I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. You see, these people, they want to be treated that like they are the cream of the crops. They want to be superior to everybody else, and they want to be treated as such because they can, because they produce oil or because they run a railroad and because they have scruples and standards and convictions, because they imagine that makes them special somehow. You see? And here's another hypocrisy. Because they imagine that because they left, they have done something, tremendous. They have sacrificed a lot because they wanted to teach the society of parasites, a lesson. Because they went into exile in the Rocky Mountains in their Atlantis and they started their utopia, and they imagined that because they left, they have sacrificed a lot. Which isn't true. Let me tell you why. Because a lot of these people, most of them at least, they are rich. Dagny is well off because she comes from a rich family that runs a transcontinental railroad. Frank Reardon is hella rich. Francisco da Cunha, yet again, probably the richest out of them all, right? John Galt can manage just fine. Everybody there can manage just fine. But most of them that we know about, they're pretty rich. The guy with the oil rig, he is rich too. We got Midas Mulligan from the bank. He is rich. We got a judge. He's of course well off. So What's the great sacrifice that we're talking about here? Nothing has changed for them because they left. They had all the money, all the resources, but they wanted that attention. They wanted that acknowledgement that they are superior from the people. Hypocrisy, right? They didn't sacrifice anything by leaving. And most of all, the greatest fallacy of all, that they have inflicted a great wound on society by leaving and taking their genius with them. Because in the book, uh, because they left, they have completely scarred the nation. The nation doesn't know what to do because these geniuses left, which is, of course, a complete fallacy, nonsense. You see, I mean, society will move on with or without you. A society, the well being and the prosperity of a nation doesn't depend on you, on Hank Reardon, on Dagny, on John Galt, and all those other people. And it doesn't depend on them. Okay, no matter how many people of expertise, of prowess, if they all left today in the real world, the world would move on without even noticing, without even blinking. Because that's the reality of all things. But these people imagine that they're so important, so relevant, so significant, of such importance that an entire continent would stop just because they left and they took their productive genius with them. I mean, the arrogance of this is just, you see what it is? It is juvenile beyond any acceptable limits to imagine that you're so important that hundreds of billions of people on a continent wouldn't know what to do with themselves because you decided selfishly, like a child, to take your toys and leave. Right? They have a juvenile mindset. They, like I said, they live in their own bubble because they have absolutely no perception of the real world. Because all their lives they thought they were geniuses and they thought they were better than most people. And that's because they think they have done something tremendous. They have wounded the nation by leaving. They are juvenile, infantile. They have an infantile mentality. And extremely, they have a horrible self-entitlement, and they have a skewed, a mutated, a grotesque way of evaluating themselves. They perceive themselves in a horrid way as being, the center of all things, and all things orbit around them because they're geniuses. And they have convictions and they have scruples, and that's about it. Right? A juvenile mentality. Infantile. No self-awareness. I'm going to repeat myself. No self-awareness at all. Completely. A complete lack of any perception of reality. Right? Of reality. Somebody should have taken these people and they just should have told them the truth. Listen, buddy. You might be all that, you might do all that, you might have all of these ideas and all of these scruples and standards, but listen, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gives a flying fuck about what you do, what you have to offer, what you think, and all of that. Nobody cares. Okay? The world, life, society, people, they will move on with you or without you. And no matter how much you struggle, understand this, that the world, life, society, people, they will move on and everything will fall apart and it will build itself again and it will fall apart again. And eventually it will be only dust, and then at the final hour, even the dust will vanish and the memory of what we have accomplished will be forgotten. It will fade away. And it would be like we never even existed. right? Somebody should have told them this, especially John Galt, right? But of course, the book isn't written as such. In the book, uh, in the last couple of chapters, everybody makes such a big deal that John Galt is gonna come back and he's gonna save the nation with his big-brained, uh, 5D chess IQ, right? And everybody, you see, this is the problem because everybody makes such a big deal about this guy being the savior because he's so big-brained, you see, and that gives fuel to his delusions that oh boy, this entire nation cannot survive without me because I'm big brained, I'm big IQ. You see, when they should have just said, John Galt, you're partly responsible for this. We don't care for what you have to offer. We don't need you. Nothing is required of you. We have all decided unanimously to tell you personally that we do not care in the least about you and what you have to offer. So why don't you go back to your utopia and fuck off. Leave us alone. We'll be fine. You see, that if it were written this way, it would have proved to me that Ayn Rand isn't so biased about her genius characters. But of course, if you read the book, you immediately discover that she is completely one-sided, biased for her favorites, the geniuses, right? So, that's about it. You know, what can I say? John Galt is not that special. Sorry. You see, and I wanted to read this book, Atlas Shrugged, a long time ago because I saw this documentary about Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged. I couldn't find it, but I remember I saw this documentary, and it was about all these people that were uh, inspired by Atlas Shrugged to improve upon themselves, to advance, to elevate themselves, right? To be the best that they can be. And, right, this sounds great. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's the problem that I noticed back then when I watched this documentary. All of the people that spoke about how great this book is and how amazing the philosophy is, they were all these, clowns, Wall Street people, bankers, Hollywood people, entrepreneurs, the scum of the scum, basically, right? And they were all just beating themselves off. Oh boy, I'm in the stock market. I'm in Wall Street. I'm a banker. I'm a lawyer, right? You know, the worst of the worst. Completely selfish. Completely self-unaware, right? So that is why I wanted to read this book. And it shows that you have to be a bit psychopathic. Like I said, you have to be a robot. You have to be a machine to to respect and follow the precepts of this philosophy, materialism, objectivism, right? Let me tell you, no matter what you do in life, no matter how much you produce, no matter how many things you get, they will not make you happy. They will not make you happy. They will make you hollow. You will feel empty inside, right? The only way you can attain some sort of, what do you want to call it, self-esteem and balance and peace and any kind of real love for yourself is to have inner resources. Inner resources, which comes with self-awareness. You have to have self-awareness. Because if you don't, you're not gonna fully understand what you really need in life to make you happy. You're gonna chase a better job, a bigger paycheck, a bigger house, a bigger car, everything to be more expensive. And you're gonna surround yourself with all of these furnitures and this status and this reputation, and they're not gonna make you happy. In fact, The opposite is gonna happen. They're gonna make you more conceited, even more confident in the fact, uh, in the false perception that you are truly tremendous because you have better things and you are a good financier, or you're the greatest criminal on Wall Street. That's gonna tickle you just right. It's gonna tickle your ego, right? Material things will not make you happy unless you're a psychopath, right? um, it's crazy, right? And I can speak from a place of experience because I had a lot of things. I had a pretty substantial sum at some point, and I bought things and I did things and I went, uh, I traveled, and let me tell you, it didn't make me happy at all. The more I bought, the more I achieved financially, status wise, it just left me hollow, man, because I realized that it's not that important. It's not that important. It is more important to find your peace. That that will that is how you will find happiness, right? You see. And these people, the only way they can equate happiness or joy or respect is to be hard-working workaholics, productive machines, automatons, soulless, right? They have to constantly be at work. They have to give orders. They have to solve problems. They have to give solutions. They have to vomit out orders. They have to think constantly. They have to keep their fucking minds busy, because otherwise what you have left is the darkness, is the abyss. And as Nietzsche, you have to stare at the abyss and it will stare back, and that is how you will find out who you truly are. But if you keep yourself busy 24/7 with stupid shit, with nonsense, repetitive nonsense, you will never be self-aware. You will not know who you truly are, and you will not know what will truly make you happy. You see? But they don't know that because that's the only thing they know. To be busy, to be busy. You see, there's nothing wrong with occupying yourself with what you love. I do that with writing and reading, but I don't do it all the time because sometimes you have to sit back and laze about and sleep and drink a beer and smoke and just be lazy. There's nothing wrong with being lazy, but these people, they cannot handle being lazy. You see, there's also a genius to being lazy. To just say, fuck everything else. I don't have to prove that I am significant to anyone, not even to me. You see, but these people, they cannot. They cannot imagine that in the grander scheme of things that they are completely irrelevant, um, with or without their geniuses. They cannot handle be they cannot handle to be completely insignificant. They cannot face their own emptiness. And that is why they pursue this insane philosophy of always being productive, of always being ahead of the game, of always being occupied with something, of producing, of being productive, of working, of elevating, of improving, of motivating, solving problems. At the end of the day, somebody should have told them that it doesn't matter one way or the other. It will not change anything. It's not going to solve anything. So don't take yourself too seriously with all of this, because it will all go away. It will all fade away, and it will be forgotten. You see, somebody should have told them this. Somebody should have told John Galt to not take himself too seriously and to sit back and enjoy life, right? Because if I were them, I wouldn't have come back. I would have stayed in the Rocky Mountains in my utopia in the New Atlantis, and I would have chilled. I would have chilled, right? But that's about it, right? I rambled on enough. Uh, you know, the gift of genius can be hollow, right? If you do not know how to live your life well, right? Life is not about puzzles and producing something and solving riddles and working yourself to death, because that is how you define your existence, because that is how you derive some sort of worth, right? It's all imaginary. They are delusions. They are delusions. And a lot of people, they are deluded that they think that if they do this or they do that, somebody's gonna acknowledge them. It will never happen, right? So that's about it. That is the flaw of John Galt. Thanks for watching, and see ya!